the biggest hurdle you're going to have to climb as a house flipper and a real estate investor is dealing with rehabs, therefore contractors. The problem is the advice that's given out there is from people that are doing dozens, if not more, projects. So they have something to offer that you don't, which is endless work. So you have to come up with some advanced tactics that are going to work for beginners instead of trying to compete with the big boys out there or the new builders. And after dealing with hundreds of contractors and actually being a contractor to customers myself for over a decade, I've learned a few things that will help you get better prices on bids to avoid what I call the contractor's black hole. That's where you start a project and they never finish it, and get the results from the project that you actually want. But first, before we get into that, I want to welcome you to the Moat podcast, which is about building a moat around your personal empire. Now, that moat consists of, yes, wealth, mostly from real estate, which is a lot of what we talk about here. That's how I was able to build a moat around my empire, which really comes down to yourself, your family, and whoever else you let inside. Now, the moat does come down to more things than just wealth. It's cash flow from businesses. It's your own personal awareness and mindfulness. It's your own personal skills, which is really knowledge plus experience. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. But let's start with real estate. Let's start with how you, as a beginner house flipper or real estate investor, deal with contractors, especially those who are working with people who have more to offer than you might. And the first trick is really one of the cheapest tricks that is going to get you better pricing on your bids immediately. And I call it pre-contracting. Now, I was at Walmart the other day and this guy was checking out. He was wearing a tuxedo. And he checks out, he walks out the door. Nobody checks his receipt at all. And then here comes me. I have a hole in my sweatshirt. I'm wearing Crocs. It's a Sunday. I even have a tub that I bring to Walmart. That way, instead of using their bags, I can just throw all the stuff in the tub, carry the tub in the house. Makes it a lot easier to deal with my stuff. However, I realize as I'm walking out, I not only get checked by one receipt checker, but I get checked by two. Because obviously I look like a dude that steals from the self-checkout line at Walmart. But the tuxedo guy, well, they didn't check him at all. And why is that? And it's because of filters. It's because that tuxedo was a filter that guy was wearing that made everybody perceive him as somebody who's not going to steal stuff. And we want to do the same thing when we're dealing with contractors. We want to put a filter on the project that you're asking them to come bid. Because you got to realize that you're dealing with these people who may have dozens of projects. So even if a contractor doesn't really like the project that they're getting to bid on, they're still thinking, well, this is an endless amount of work for me and I really need to continue to put food on the plate, so I'll take it anyway. Or you're dealing with the plethora of new builds out there. And as a contractor, I certainly know that it's a lot easier to deal with a new build. It's much more straightforward. It is endless work. It doesn't require a lot of thinking. And when it doesn't require a lot of thinking, that means that I can really put anybody from my crew on it. They just have to follow the plans and put things together. Whereas what a rehab on the types of projects that we're probably buying, it requires you to really think through all the steps. Basically, every step requires problem solving. And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to put a filter on it that makes it seem more straightforward. Because these guys go in there and they have to be thinking, oh gosh, like, I don't know what's going to happen when I open up this wall or when this junk gets moved. I don't know how big this job is going to get. And yeah, of course, there's change orders and things like that, but that always muddies a relationship. And a lot of times it doesn't turn out in the contractor's favor or the customer's favor. So they really have learned to try to avoid projects that are seemingly an endless pit. It never turns out good for them. So how do you put this filter on your project? And it really comes down to a few things. And I call it pre-contracting. before you bring somebody out to bid the job, you're going to clean it. And I know that seems simple, but what I'm going to do is either personally, myself, or with a crew that I manage, employees that are hired by me, therefore they're not thinking about the endless pit. That's my problem, not their problem. I'm going to ask them to go clean up the job site, junk it out, get all the crap out of there. I'm even going to have them sweep. I'm going to make it look less scary. And you might not have a crew. That's okay. Maybe you're not out there doing the things yourself. Maybe you're out of state investing, even though I'm not a big fan of that. Therefore, you can hire a different crew that goes in and cleans. Find people who do nothing but cleanup. That should be easier to find because people who do nothing but cleaning generally don't have some of the more skilled labor under their belt. Therefore, they are doing nothing but cleaning. You can usually get a better price because prices go up the more the skills increase. Makes sense, right? So first, you want to clean the project. Next, you want to take the scary out of it, is what I would call it. Now, these projects, you might have holes in the walls, you might have holes in the floors and the ceiling, you might have wires hanging out everywhere. Well, what I like to do before I have somebody come in to bid, I mean, just imagine this. An electrician comes in and they're competing against the new build that is brand new subfloor, brand new walls, everything's pretty, everything's clean. And they're thinking, I either want to deal with this pit of a job or this nice, clean-cut new build that I've dealt with 100 times before. So I'm going to take those holes in the drywall, and I'm not going to patch them. I'm simply going to cut them clean. Instead of a hole in the wall, I'm going to make a square in the wall. And instead of a punch-through floor, I'm going to make a square hole in the floor, or I might have some of those things patched up. Depends how bad it is, but you get the idea here. You want to take as much of the scary out as you possibly can. Now, you don't want to go overboard here because ultimately what we're trying to do is lower the amount that it costs to do the rehab. So if you spend too much on the pre-contracting, ultimately it's going to have an adverse effect on the total project. Might get a better bid. Obviously, you're going to pay more overall. And now one more thing is an ozone machine. Now this goes a really long way. An ozone machine does some kind of scientific crap, takes something out of the air, something with you're not supposed to be in the house when it's happening. So it obviously does something awesome. But what it does is it takes all the smell out. Mold smell, pet smell. You make the place seem a lot nicer. Smell goes a long way when it comes to these projects. And the final thing that you're going to do in the way of pre-contracting is you are going to speak correctly to these guys. You are going to create the filter verbally. You're not going to call the guy and say, oh, I got this terrifying job that you need to come out and bid. I just have no clue what to do. It seems so large of a project. I just can't imagine the steps. I need a professional to come out. No. You don't want to say things like that. Obviously, you're not going to be that crazy about it. But you want to say things like, yeah, it's really not that bad. Gosh, I'm thinking about doing some of this myself, but I think it'd be a lot easier to contract. It shouldn't take too long to do. I'd love for you to come check it out. See how those things create a different filter for the job. Now, let's move on to an even cheaper trick. But before we do that, I just want to say one more thing about the filter. You are competing with the new builds and the endless work because people, not just contractors, people in general lack a vision. I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, they lack the ability to see what that finished project will look like. And that's why you, as the investor or the house flipper, you need to have the vision and appropriately convey that vision. And that's what you're trying to do with this filter, is you're trying to help people see the finished project, the finished product. And that is going to help you at the outset. that's going to help you avoid not getting a bid at all. A lot of times these guys, they have their radar out. They know what a crappy job sounds and feels like. They know what a novice investor sounds like. And they might not even come to bid the thing at all because they think it's going to be a waste of their time. Or they might start the job and then they realize, oh gosh, this is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And that's how people get put in the contractor's black hole. A contractor gets through some of the project and then they realize that, well, they just got all the profit out of it and the rest is going to be really crappy for them, or it's work that they don't want to do. And they kind of just take off, stop answering the phone calls because they go to the path of least resistance. Water always flows in the path of least resistance. And that's going to be a theme that we keep coming back to today. But there's a lot of resistance in unknown, difficult work. And if they don't end up putting you in the black hole and they're behind financially because they weren't able to think through all the steps, well, this is where corners start to get cut because they have to do something other than just eat it. Some will eat it, but that won't happen for long. So you have to make sure they can see the end result. Therefore, they can bid it properly, bid it well, hopefully in your favor, but in a way that they can see it long enough to where they will complete the job. Now, the even cheaper trick. Now, when I started out, I went through all of the different applications out there, the different softwares. I mean, there's all kinds of them. Don't want to name them, but you know what I'm talking about. There's all kinds of products out there that are freaking awesome. It seems like it would be perfect. You put the bids in there, and when you pay a contractor, it automatically updates. It connects with your QuickBooks. It has project management. It has scheduling. It has this, that, and the other thing. It seems like the perfect solution. And I tried all of them. Heck, I even built custom ones for our specific scenario. And it all would have worked out great, except for one humongous issue. Is that I spent more time trying to manage contractors and even crew members on my own team to use the product as opposed to managing them to do what I really need, which is a phenomenal rehab so I could go sell or rent out this property. And eventually I realized that it's just not worth it. So I need to find an app that all contractors use already, things that I know that they would use because they use it on a daily basis. Because remember, water always flows in the path of least resistance. So what is an app that all contractors already use? It's not Slack. It's not WirePulse. It's not Monday.com. It's not Airtable. It's text message. It's phone calls, mainly text message. Everybody is on their phone texting all the time. So why try to pull them from something that they're already doing to something that is totally foreign to them? That's going to cause so much unneeded work for myself. Now, if you have software that you're wanting to use on your team or yourself personally, fine, but that's on you, not on the contractor. Remember, there's only so many things to manage. You don't want to be managing them to use your Slack channel. You want to let water flow where water flows. And if you need to do things on your team administratively, go ahead. I don't know if that's the best thing for you or not at this point in your career, but if you want it, you do it or have somebody on your team do it. Because once again, you are competing against people who, frankly, are better than you. They have more to offer than you do. They have either easier jobs or more jobs than you might have to offer. And maybe you'll get to that point. But today, you need every advantage that you possibly can. And so make it as easy as you can. Make it as easy as you possibly can on them. You do the extra work. Now, the next tactic is the hardest, and it's the most important far and away. This is what separates you from becoming the leader that people choose to follow versus the micromanager that everybody abandons. And when I was early in my career, I finally got fed up enough with being taken advantage of by contractors because I had just left the corporate world. And in the corporate world, you learn a lot about quote unquote leadership, which works in certain settings. However, when I went off on my own, I learned the hard way that those tactics, for lack of better words, don't really line up when you're not in between the company and the person that you're dealing with. You are the company. And that makes a total difference. And when I started out using those tactics, I learned not very quickly, but pretty harshly, that I was really just setting myself up to be taken advantage of because the contracting world is very difficult. The small business world is very difficult. And there are just lots of sharks out there who, when they smell blood in the water, they are going out to get it. They are focused on putting food on their plate. And that's really hard to do in this business sometimes. And so you want to make sure that you're just not fish food. And that doesn't mean that you need to be a shark and you need to go take advantage of people. But that is what I thought. That is the shift. When I finally got fed up with being taken advantage of, I turned mean. And I decided that I was never going to clean up the messes anymore. I was never going to deal with having to go back to a job and have another contractor clean up the mess from the first contractor because, they didn't complete their job. And so I would go out there and I just wouldn't take any bull crap. I wouldn't pay people until they were 100% done. And really what that led to was that I would just be constantly adding new contractors and burning through them. Nobody wanted to continue to work with me. I had just become a micromanager. I was going to every job site every day, looking at everything that everybody did and making sure it was exactly the way that I wanted it. But I couldn't understand why, even though this got me the result that I wanted, and therefore got the contractors paid, I couldn't understand why I spent all of my time recruiting new contractors. And finally, it hit me that the difference between being a micromanager and being a leader is simply the expectations that you set. When I go chew somebody's head off because they didn't do the things that I had in my head that needed to be done, well, that's not leadership. That's micromanagement. However, had I set clear expectations, because, see, they didn't know what I had in my head. I knew what I had in my head, but I've learned that communication in business or in life is really one of the most difficult things. What I think I'm saying is not what they're hearing. So when I go and chew their head off because they didn't do what I thought I had told them, well, that's not really their fault. That's my fault because I didn't clearly communicate the vision that I had in my head. And that's why number 3 is back to the basics. It's setting very clear expectations. And this is a lesson that I continue to learn every single day, that what I think I said to you was not what you heard. So the only approach that I can see that works is a shotgun approach. It's not just me telling you. It's not just me showing you. It's a method of giving people expectations in every format that I possibly can. So this is what I do when I meet a contractor on a job site to get a bid. First, I go prepared with what I think that scope of work should look like. And it's detailed. I do my initial homework. And then I explain that vision verbally to the contractor. I show them at the house. And then I let them, through their expertise, show me if anything that I'm thinking just doesn't work. And now we adjust the plan accordingly. And then I have my written scope of work based on the adjustments that that contractor and I made. I have the written, I have the verbal, we discuss it. And finally, the icing on the cake is I grab a GoPro or your iPhone or whatever camera with audio that you have, and I literally walk through the scope of work on the job site with the contractor, discussing it with him. All right, so we said that we were going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. Hey, Mr. Contractor, man, do you agree with this? Yes, okay, or no, you think something different? What is it? Say it to the camera. And hey, man, like, this isn't going anywhere. We're not going to put this out on the internet. This is just for me and you. When we get done here, I'm going to send you a copy of the written scope of work. I'm going to send you this video. And then let's talk about one more thing that's really important is your pay schedule. So when you send me your bid, Mr. Contractor, I want to make sure that you have a schedule of when you want paid at what increments. Because I don't think that if you are giving me a $20,000 bid, for instance, I don't think you should have to wait till the end of the project to get paid. I think that it's very fair for you to ask for incremental payments throughout the project. But I want to agree upon the order in which you're going to do these jobs in your scope of work and where you want paid in each one of those chunks of work. That's what I want in the bid. I want you to send it to me via text right next to this video that I'm going to send you via text. And that way we know that the written scope of work and the video are corresponding with the numbers, both the overall bid and the pay schedule that you're sending me. And that way, when it comes time to get paid for your first checkpoint of your pay schedule, we can go back and look at that and say that either you did it or you didn't do it. And here's a really important thing to understand, that when you set the expectations, if you've truly done everything that you can do to properly communicate the scope of work, and they clearly have understood it then and there, which you have on video and written, then when it comes down to holding accountability, you can be ruthless because you absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, know that they understood your vision. And that's what separates leadership from micromanagement. Is the problem that I had early on is that I was not clearly setting expectations. And I say early on, I still have that problem. It's not something that you just automatically get. It's something that you work on over and over and over, and you constantly iterate to get better and better and better. But when you have absolutely set a clear expectation that they agree upon, and then they miss, they're not going to be mad at you. Or they shouldn't be mad at you. And that's how you do the thing that really matters, not only in business, but in life. And that's building relationship capital. As I had mentioned, I went through a plethora of contractors, with always building the pipeline of the next contractor that I was going to work with. And that's because I was never actually building relationships with these guys. It was totally transactional. But when you start building relationships with these guys, now they want to come work on your job site instead of the new build. They don't care that the other guys got 50 projects in a row. They really enjoy the work with you. They know that they're going to get paid on time for what you guys agreed upon. And that's where it comes down to the real filter. Going back to tactic number one, the real filter is you. The real filter is the way that the contractor perceives you. Do they think that you're a trustworthy person that is going to take care of them? Or are you just like all the other ones that are going to just try to take advantage of them as well to get the lowest prices to where they can't even afford to put food on their table? And there is a middle ground there that works for everybody. But the longer you work with somebody, the more relationship capital you work or you build with somebody, therefore work with them for many years, hopefully, they start to learn you. They start to learn what you like on your projects. They start to learn the things you don't like. And the amount of bandwidth that you have to put into each rehab project that you do, because hopefully you do a lot of them in your career and build a bigger and bigger moat, each project takes less bandwidth instead of more bandwidth. And that's how people are really able to expand. You can't harshly manage a bunch of projects, but if you have a Rolodex of contractors who you have a lot of trust, relationship capital with, it'll be easy for you to do these projects. And not only that, not only is it financially lucrative for you, but it goes beyond that. You see, what I don't want for people is for you to be trapped in a job that you hate and give up the best years, the best hours of the best years of your life to doing something that at the end of the day isn't really going to be profound for you. But instead, do your own thing. Have your own business. Go buy real estate. Have a house flipping business that not only do you flip houses, but you also refinance them and hold them as rentals and build true wealth that's not just for you, but it's generational. And when you do that, your line between life and work kind of starts to vanish. It's all kind of the same thing. Working is simply living. It's part of your life. You don't think about Monday through Friday anymore. You just think about doing what you do. And that's where we go back to this relationship capital. And these are some of the best people that you're going to work with. These are the relationships that you're going to build in your empire. This is intrinsic value that you just don't get anywhere else. But the best part is it's not only intrinsic, it's also extrinsic. It's true wealth that continues to pay you day in and day out, even when you take your foot off the gas. And that's what we're here to talk about. And these 3 tactics are just the tip of the iceberg. I actually did a whole video about the 3 critical steps that new house flippers need to make. And I did it on my main channel. I'll link it right here. Go check it out. Thanks for hanging out, guys.